You sound good. So Benny just flew in, literally, while you were flying down south.
Right.
And you just drove up.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that? What was that like? You just went up in a bush plane? What kind of plane was this?
Oh, Mike Bargabus that's run the road for a lot of years. He and I are good friends. And I went down to visit him and his wife because I've gone out fishing with them quite a bit at Valdez. We got down there, and he's like, let's go flying like we used to do, you know. When he and I worked at Linden, and they didn't have any work, we'd just go fly. Been all over Alaska, you know, not all over all of it, but a lot of this up here around Fairbanks and that. And he's like, hey, we haven't done it for 8 years. Let's go get in the plane and go flying. So we did. Went over Mount Spur, the active volcano, steam coming out of it. Pretty good video of it yesterday. We went up George Glacier and looked for the pieces of that airplane that crashed in the 50s and looked at about 50 head of white mountain goats, and we just had a good time. It's, you know, it's a blast.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate to have friends like that we can just go do that, because that's not something just anybody can, you know. If I had to pay for that, it'd be a lot of money.
Have you flown out of there before, down there?
Yeah. Yeah, I've flown with Mike a lot, you know.
I always thought it was up here in Fairbanks, but you've been down there too.
Down there. We flew from here to Valdez one year to take care of his boat, and then we flew home to Wasilla, and then to his house at Wasilla, and then the other time we took off from Valdez and flew all the way around Kodiak, and then came up along Redoubt and all those mountains and into Wasilla. And another time we went out to Central and saw his son that's got the gold mine out there, and then flew down the Yukon River almost to Tanana, and then back out around in Nenana, and then back into Fairbanks. And another time we went, twice I've been all the way around McKinley. The first time was in his Bonanza, and we left Fairbanks and headed to Wasilla and flew around the backside and up over Rainy Pass where the Iditarod goes, and and then the time we went to Valdez to take care of his boat, when we got ready to come back to Fairbanks from Wasilla, he's like, okay, how do you want to fly home? And I'm like, I want to get up against Mount McKinley as high as we can safely. And so we took off from Big Lake, and it's a, you know, steady climb. That plane had a ceiling of about 11,000 feet, 11,500 in that pass. I can't remember the name of that pass to the west of Denali there, but we went up over that pass, and McKinley's right there off your wing, and we started off of it, and I said something to him, and he goes, shut up, I got to fly. And I never said another word, but McKinley's 500 feet off the wingtip. And at that altitude and with that much space, you don't realize what's going on around you. And it was a few minutes. He was pretty quiet. You could tell he was flying. And we got out there a ways, and he goes, we were dropping about 500 feet a minute. You know, the downdraft when we come up over that pass was sucking us right down.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we flew down and flew over where they land the planes for the mountain climbers to start their climbs, and then flew back into Fairbanks. Another time we went off, out there to the south of Nenana, and we were just flying, looking at gold mines and flying over them and looking at old gold mines. And, you know, there's some kind of a station out there and for the military, and I looked at Mike, I said, I need to pee. You know, here you are in the plane, and he's like, oh, there's a landing strip right up here. So he flew over there, and we landed, and he goes, yeah, I was about to need to do that too. So we walked around all them old buildings there, and, you know, we've just done, you know, Mike and I are good friends, and we just have done that.
Yeah.
And it's a special thing, and I don't take it for granted, because not everybody gets to do that.
Yeah, my good friend, I went with his uncle and my friend. I can't remember what Cessna it was, but we took off out of Fairbanks, And I'll tell you what, I would rather take off in something like that than a commercial airliner. It just, you don't even know you're off the ground until you're off the ground. You know, you're like, oh, wow. You don't even feel it like you would in a normal commercial airline. But, and the other thing, too, that's funny is we flew out to Birch Lake and up, you know, out by the Wood River out there by Blair Lakes and stuff like that. And coming back over Harding Lake, you know, I saw this semi-truck driving, you know, north to Fairbanks. We get back to town, land. I get out and then I go back to North Pole and I see that semi-truck almost to Pegger Road. It's like I just saw that from the air. It's kind of cool, you know. It's like how fast you go.
Well, and the other thing that Mike did, he bought that 205. He bought it in Seattle and flew it to New York for his brother's an airplane mechanic, and they worked on it there. And then he's getting ready to bring that plane up here, and he calls me and he goes, "You want to fly back to Alaska with me?" It's like, oh yeah. So I flew. This was literally spur of the moment. I jumped on a plane and flew to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and met him at a little small municipal airport out of Minneapolis, and then we followed the Alcan back up. We just flew the Alcan coming back up, and that was so cool.
So would you guys just land at different strips, or
we only landed twice? We landed 3 times in Canada. That's not right. We landed right there at Lethbridge when we crossed at Sweetgrass.
Just get fuel there or whatever.
We had to check in with Border Patrol.
Oh, okay.
And then we went from there to Fort Nelson. We flew from there to Fort Nelson, and we got fuel at Fort Nelson. And then we flew from there to Whitehorse, and then we spent the night at Whitehorse and got fuel there. And then we flew from there to Anchorage. Yeah. So
that's cool. One time he was flying to go see his kid up there at the gold mine, and the weather come in, so he stopped there at Hilltop and left the plane there for a day or two. But
yeah,
that was kind of neat. I had to go park down there at the north entrance there to let him know we needed to take off there. But
yeah,
it's kind of neat.
So he landed there right by Hilltop, or
yeah, the clouds are real low, so he just landed right there and just parked there.
Awesome.
He's used to going to Hilltop, so he just whip in there at the plane.
Go and get some pie real quick.
Yeah,
It'll just be a minute, guys. You know.
But I mean, Mike's flown since he was, I think he's 70 or 71 now, but he's flown since he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And
you bring that mic down just a little bit more.
And he's flown since he's a teenager, and he's been up. He's from New York, but he used to come up here and then moved up here.
Yeah.
And he's had a lot of different planes. I mean, he's had everything from a de Havilland Beaver to Cessnas and Bonanzas and,
Super Cubs. Probably.
No, I don't. He might have had a Super Cub, but I'm not. I think he always wanted something a little bigger, but he.
It's amazing what those guys do in those Super Cubs, though.
It is.
Short landing videos,
stall takeoffs and stuff, but I was just fortunate to become friends with Mike up here. It's because of the Haul Road that I became friends with Mike up here.
Where did you first meet Mike when you came up here?
When I worked for Linden the first time.
Okay. Do you remember the first time you met him?
I do not. And I don't know why I really don't know how.
It just kind of happened.
It just happened, and we started talking. And Mike doesn't have a lot of friends. He's very quiet, very selective, super, super intelligent man. And he likes to, when he talks, he doesn't like to just have meaningless conversations. He likes to have something that's about something.
Yeah.
And and his wife's. I've gotten to know both of them, him and his wife, and I call her Ma, even though she's darn near my age, or she's older than I am. But I mean, they're just super good people.
Yeah.
And I truly treasure their friendship. So, but anyway, yeah,
that's fun.
I had fun yesterday. I was going to come back up here yesterday, and Mike's like, "Well, let's go flying again," and you can't say no.
I don't blame you one bit.
I mean, we got back on the ground, I think it was 7 o'clock last night. And it's just absolutely beautiful flight. Just beautiful. We ended up at about 11,500 feet. And I don't know what that chain of mountains is that goes out there that Redoubt and all those are in. But
not sure.
I'm not sure what chain of mountains that is, but, I got some awesome pictures of it.
Yeah.
Some awesome pictures. So, anyway.
Right on. So you're gonna buy an airplane next and start flying?
No. That's like trying to buy a Harley now and go ride with guys on a Harley. Nah, that's stuff you do when you're a kid. You learn that when your reflexes are fast, so that when you get old, it's memory muscle. Just like driving these trucks, it's memory muscle.
Yeah.
Or muscle memory for everything you do. It's, I have flown the plane with Mike, Like when we came back from the lower 48, he's like, hold this steady and I'm going to take a little nap. We were about 11,000 feet, so I had, something happened. I could wake him up quick enough. And
Do you guys ever run out of fuel in one of the tanks?
No, he don't allow that to happen, I guarantee you.
That's funny. I was down, so our cousin Chris down in the States, down in Oklahoma, he had I don't know if he still has an airplane, but he had an airplane for a little while. Yeah, it was a little 4-seater Cessna something. Anyways, we were flying. We took off out of Lindsay, Oklahoma, and we went down to the Texas border, stopped there by, I can't remember the place. It was right off these lakes right there, stopped and had a burger. And we took off and we're flying, and next thing I know, I hear him say, "Uh-oh," and the motor quit.
Ooh.
Well, we ran out of fuel out of that one side of that one wing there.
Right.
So he switched over, but we had already switched tanks before. So he didn't have very much in that other tank that he switched back to. And, well, I was like, oh, my gosh. I'm like 14 years old, 15 years old. I'm like, we're going to die, And sure enough, we were going to go get fuel at this runway like 5-10 miles away. And we made it, but it was just like, are you kidding me right now? You don't ever want to hear a pilot say that, you know?
We're out of gas.
He just wanted to see how you'd react.
Yeah. Did you ever fly with Chris?
I never did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that was a good time. But I remember before we took off, this guy came out there in the field and he's like, "I'll shine this big spotlight. That way, we'll look for some deers. That way they don't take out your prop or whatever when you go to take off." I guess it's a real problem down there.
I'll bet it could be, yeah.
So, but yeah, I've been in a small plane a couple of times. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I've been in them quite a bit. Even before I came up here, I flew on different cattle ranches I worked on, looking for cattle in the fall and stuff, and you'd go back, fly, and then go get on a horse and go get them, bring them in,
Oh, yeah.
So I've actually been in a small plane before I came up here quite a bit, but probably hands down Mike's the best pilot I've ever flown with.
Yeah.
And I've flown with some good pilots, but he's top notch.
Yeah.
I think our uncle's probably pretty good.
Yeah.
But he's flew his entire career. That was his job. So
Yeah. So
Yeah, and what's funny, talking about Uncle Bill, Johnny Cash came up here in the late 80s. And he actually took Johnny Cash fly fishing. I don't know,
really?
I can't remember where they went, but some lake. And they actually have a picture of him holding my cousin Jamie when she was like a baby or a year old or something like that. Do you ever see that picture of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of famous people, you've met a few famous people in your time, haven't you?
I don't know.
We don't have to get into it if you don't want to.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
You've got a lot of stories there, but I remember that one trip going up north, we talked about that for a while. I think you met Ronald Reagan at one point.
I did as a child. Him and my dad. My dad was from Iowa, and my dad was a veterinarian. And Ronald Reagan, I don't know the years, but pre World War I and that had, or World War II had a radio station in Iowa, and it was the same radio station that the town my dad, or local to where my dad was, and he knew Ronald Reagan. And then Ronald Reagan came to California, became an actor and all that, and he was running for governor of California. I was about, I don't know the exact year, it had to be in the early 70s, but Ronald Reagan, Dan Blocker, James Dury, and an actress, and I couldn't tell you her name because she wasn't a Western actress, but anyway, they were doing a tour, and when Ronald Reagan got off the plane and we were going down the line to be introduced to him, he looked at my dad and he said, "Doc, how are you doing?" But I didn't, I was a little kid. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then turns out that Ronald Reagan was the first president I ever voted for.
That's pretty cool.
I graduated from high school in 79, and that fall, because he was elected in 79, took office in 1980. And Ronald Reagan was the first president I ever voted for. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been surreal as you saw him as a child, and you're like, oh, now this guy's running for office. you know?
Yeah. Well, you got to shake his, I got to shake his hand and stuff, and then I never ever saw him again in person. Well, I did too, because, no, that wasn't Reagan. I'm sorry.
Did you get invited to the White House? Or
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No, I don't. I've only been that far east once and never made it to Washington, D.C., and I'll keep.
You're probably okay with that, huh?
Yeah. Let's leave it at that.
You were hauling cattle that far east too? Or
No,
what? Oh, okay.
no. My cattle hauling, I did all west of the Mississippi, pretty much.
Okay.
Almost 22 years of it, all over, all classes of livestock, everything from horses, cattle, sheep, hogs.
Well, you kind of grew up around all that, though, didn't you?
I did. My dad, like I said, was a veterinarian. Before I ever drove a truck, I cowboyed on cattle ranches, herded sheep a little bit. Didn't come from a trucking family. That was kind of on my first kind of deal about trucks was 1968. I was 8 years old, and Christensen Brothers rodeo producers at the Pacific International Livestock Exposition in Portland showed up there that year with 2 brand new black cab-over Peterbilts. I thought those were the coolest things in the world. I kept going out there and looking at those trucks, and one was a truck and trailer, and the other one was a 42-foot semi with an 8-foot drum on it. And years later, I ran into Bobby Christensen Jr. and kind of got to know him a little bit. And I don't know, we were talking one day, and I said, "Well, it's your fault that I drive these dang things." And so I told him the story, and he goes, "Well, that was in 1968. He said, "We bought those trucks brand new in 1968.
Man.
And I think they had 350 Cummins. And
That's a lot of horsepower back then,
oh,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
350 Cummins and a 13-speed. An old 95-13, I believe, is probably what they had in them. And, yeah. And then learned to drive a truck on a cattle ranch.
How'd that happen? Someone just throw you in the truck? Figure it out, Benny.
That's exactly what happened. I kind of wanted to learn. Of course, I already had my chauffeur's license because I got out of high school and I don't know, I just wanted to drive a truck, so I went and got a chauffeur's license. Well, back then, you walked in to Oregon DMV. I think it cost $25. You didn't have to have a medical card. You just took a 25-question test and they put it on your license. You didn't have to take air brakes or none of that. And so I was wanting to learn how to drive, and it turned out to be one of my best friends, Terry Francis, where I got in the truck with him on my day off, and he was taking a load of fat cattle from Hermiston, Oregon to Hillsboro, Oregon, outside of Portland. So we go down with those cattle, and we start back, and we get to Cascade Locks and get out to eat dinner or lunch, and got a leaking wheel seal on the trailer. Well, so we call the boss, and he says, "I'll run back to Witham Truck Stop there in Portland and have them fix that. Don't bring it home that way." So we turned around, went back to Portland, and got that wheel seal fixed. And back then, boy, you pulled into one of those places, they got right on you. They got you in and out of there, so they fixed that wheel seal, and we were going and got back to John Day Dam, and Terry was like, "I'm running out of eyes. I'm tired." And it's dark, it's, I don't know, 10 o'clock, and he says, "If you want to get to work on time tomorrow, you're going to drive." It's like, okay. And so I got in there, and he kind of sat on the doghouse, a cab over International, one of them old solid steel, formed cabs. And so he gets in there and kind of gets me figured out how to shift that. It was a big cam 400 with 13 speed. So I get it rolling, and he crawls back there in the sleeper, and he went to sleep. And
this is on Interstate 84 by the dam?
Yeah, but only back then it was called Interstate N.
Oh, really?
Or Interstate 80 N.
Okay.
80 North. And so, it's 120 or 30 miles from the Dalles Dam to Hermiston exit, and I get off on the Butter Creek exit and drop the gears and make the corner onto the Butter Creek Highway and go to the feedlot. And he never woke up until I crossed the railroad tracks into the feedlot.
Oh, we're there.
Yeah, and so then, I don't know, it was a while longer. It was in the fall then, and we were bringing cattle in off of turnips, and they were short a truck driver. Terry told the owner of the company, he says, well, Ben knows how to drive. So I started following Terry, hauling cattle in off those feedlot cattle into the off turnips into the feedlot, and then I don't know, it was 4 or 5 months later, and something come up, and they were short. They also hauled fat cattle to IBP at Wallula at night with those trucks, and they were short a driver, and Terry said, oh, Ben can follow me to IBP. So I started following him to IBP, and
So, Benny, just to stop you, for the person out there that doesn't know, I'm assuming it's fat cattle that are getting ready to be processed?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, they're headed to
Okay. Just wanted to bring that up for anybody like, what? Fat cattle?
Yeah.
I'm sure people could figure that out, but I figured I'd ask.
Yeah, they're finished cattle.
Okay.
And, this place that I was working, they had both cows, calves, and this feedlot and everything, and Simmental cattle back then. This was in, this is like 1980, 81.
The good old days, right?
Yeah, and and then into 85, and then I left there and I went and strictly cowboyed for another 3 years.
Did you guys have CBs in the 80s back then?
We did.
Yeah.
But they were big. They were good radios back then. They were tube radios, and they'd reach out if they were tuned up right. They'd reach out.
You probably had yours all tuned up, huh?
When I first started, yeah. Yeah, I had a good one in the in the late when I didn't go out on my own until 87 or 88, and I kind of went in partnerships with a guy on a truck, and that didn't work real well, and ended up buying my own in 1990.
Yeah.
And I ran real hard. The guy I got tied in when I started was a guy by the name of Rod Owens, Hillcrest Livestock out of Klamath Falls, Oregon, and he ran you hard. Back then we'd run, you can tell this now, but we'd run 24,000 miles a month solo.
Well.
And I never ever used any help. I just did it on pure guts. Mountain Dew and Snicker bars was my drug of choice.
I was going to ask you real quick. I always try to ask people this, but what was that feeling like when you got behind that wheel and you're going down the road and you got all that power there? I mean, there's a lot of power back then, right? You got that weight pushing you. I mean, do you remember how you felt like, I'm doing this, or what was that like?
Well, the first time it was like I was really doing it was I was still driving that truck for C&B Livestock, and we went to Enterprise. We ran all the cows and calves up out of Enterprise, Oregon. So you had to go over Minham Grade, and Minham Grade was a little bit like Cabbage, but a lot, or like not Cabbage, but like the pass, but a lot narrower. I mean, it was pretty tough past two trucks on Minham Grade back then. It was a real narrow, up on not very many guardrails, and it was probably, they advertised it as 6%, but it was steeper than 6, 7, 8%. But anyway, we were coming back, and I was riding with a guy by the name of Wayne Tagg, and we get to the top of Cabbage, and we're standing there, and this guy is there. He's from the East Coast, and he's got a truck with no jakes, and he's looking off. He's heard all these stories about cabbage, and he's scared to death. And he's like, "Can you drive this truck off the pass off cabbage for me?" And Wayne looks at me, and I hadn't driven a truck off there yet, you know. I had empty but not loaded. And Wayne looks at me and says, "Can you get this truck off there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can." He says, "You know, stick it in such and such gear." I don't remember exactly the gears, and just come off there, you know. So he got in this other guy's truck and drove it down to the Arrowhead truck stop there at the bottom of Cabbage. And I will never forget this. That guy pulled these bags out of that truck, locked it up with the keys in it, went inside and called somebody and told him to come and get that truck. And he went into Pendleton and caught a Greyhound bus.
Wow.
Wow, just from coming off Cabbage.
Yeah,
back
that
then.
hill scared that guy so bad.
I'm trying to think. You guys are probably, what, third over or something like
Yeah,
that, coming off that? Or
Probably
back then?
Probably fourth.
Fourth? Yeah.
Probably fourth direct, or yeah, fourth, because that was a 13 speed, you know.
Yeah.
That truck had 410 rears.
Okay.
And that truck would have been hauling probably about 96,000.
I've seen a lot of wrecked trucks on that hill. Seems like we've seen a lot of FedEx trucks that had wrecked on that hill coming down too.
Well, I've seen a lot of those escape ramps. So them escape ramps have been there ever since I remember.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a lot of trucks in them. I've seen at one time I saw 3 trucks in 2 of the ramps of the same company at the same time.
Wow.
Guys come off there, and that hill can be deceiving because you look out there and you see that interstate out there in front of you. You think, well, it's just right out there. And if they aren't experienced and they don't, and those trucks in particular didn't have any Jake brakes, and they went bailing off there too fast and run out of brakes, and
It's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Can you bring that mic down just a little bit? You don't need to come closer to it. Just bring it down. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can bring it down like that. There you go.
So anyway, that's
a lot better.
That's kind of the story, you know.
Yeah.
And
I've never lost my brakes before, but I can imagine it'd be a scary feeling.
I've never lost them. I've had them warm, and it doesn't bother me to get them warm. It's when you got, you know. But when you do when you know, like I'll come off Cabbage or even the pass up here. I probably come off at sometimes or 36 mile. I come off there, I know, a little faster than some guys do. And I'm not afraid to use my brakes per se. I'm more scared of going too slow and locking up the Jake. I'd rather have it come off there a little fast, but
and that's the experience of the road too. Like we talked about
that's
before.
my experience with cattle too. Because with cattle, you know, when you learn to drive with cattle, you set yourself up different. It's a little like pulling a tanker, but it's different. You're darn sure going to stop twice. You're gonna get stopped, and then them cattle are gonna come forward or haul, you know, whatever. It's just, I don't know. I know where I'm comfortable from years of experience coming off. You know, most of the time when I came off Cabbage, when I was hauling cattle and hogs and sheep all the time, I guarantee you, when I came around that corner at that last corner at the bottom, I always got a puff of smoke. That's how I came off there. And, you know, and I came off there one time in a 7-axle truck, you know, a truck that was legal for $99,000, and I only had about $40,000 in there. But I had my lift axle down because I had the cattle all to the front of the trailer and I'm cruising off there. I mean, I'm coming off there 55, 60.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this guy's on the CB. He's just screaming, "Runaway cattle truck, everybody down below, look out, runaway cattle truck, runaway cattle truck." And I look in the mirrors, and I'm like, where's he at? You know, I'm looking for this guy coming up behind me, and all of a sudden I realize the guy's talking about me. You know?
You were flat running, huh?
I was flat coming off there. The other thing with cattle is I drove through every kind of weather condition that the lower 48 could throw at you. You never stopped because you couldn't. You got a live commodity behind you. You got an animal that's got to eat and drink. And cattle, you don't want them laying down, so You want to get them to where they can rest, and so you learn to push through every kind of scenario there is.
So you don't want them laying down, is that what you're saying?
Right.
So, okay, so that's why cattle guys are always moving pretty quick.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, cattle are shrinking. Every moment that cattle's on cattle or hogs or sheep, whatever, on a truck, they're costing the guy that owns those cattle money because they're shrinking, they're losing weight. And that, you know, so you want to get that livestock there, whatever it is, there as fast as you can, as quickly as you can.
And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, there's a lot of things that go into this kind of thing. You know?
And that translated to how I drove truck the rest of my life. Up here, to me, when they dispatched me with load, it was my job to get it from point A to point B ASAP.
Yeah.
You know, just don't quit. You go. And it was a hard deal for me with me to say, well, it's not a live commodity anymore, but it's that responsibility, that integrity of getting the job done and getting it done as quick as possible. And there's times up there on that north slope when time is critical, when you got a hot shot load or a hot load that they want up there ASAP because maybe they're building something, and I know this happened. I took a load up there, 40-foot semi with a 40-foot piece I-beam on it. And the whole crew was shut down there at Z-Pad waiting for that one-piece iron. They couldn't move forward without that one-piece iron.
Yeah, so you got all those people waiting on just that one load.
That one piece that somebody forgot to order or whatever happened, I have no idea. And that was when I worked for Linden the first time, and I will never forget. That's the first time I ever pulled into a pad, and man, there was guys standing there to meet me. I mean, I'm not kidding you. There was like 4 or 5 guys standing there waiting for when I pulled in there, and they instantly started untying. One guy opened my side box and just pulled my winch bar out and went to loosen them, straps, and they pulled the crane over there and grabbed that beam.
Wow.
And we get it all unloaded, and they helped me roll my straps up, everything. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. And then the guy comes over and he says, "The cook's waiting for you up there. He's going to fix your breakfast."
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd run all night up there. And I thought, man, this can be kind of like being around cattle ranchers, because a lot of them cattle ranchers fed you when you hauled cattle for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, I didn't ever intend to come up here. It wasn't anything that was ever on my dream list. It just happened.
It's funny how things work like that. Right place, right time. It's kind of like how you started driving too.
Yeah.
Just right place, right time. And
Right time.
it's amazing if one thing would have changed, how different things would be.
Well, and, I came up, met you. You were one of the first guys I really met up here. Shared a shop with you for almost 5 years. Got to know you and your family. Not Nathan so well back then, but you and your kids. And
I was trying to get him to wash my truck, but he wouldn't come over.
no,
I washed it
you'd
plenty.
make your,
I think I washed Benny's truck just as much as I washed yours.
he'd make his pregnant sister wash the truck. Then.
She liked to work. I think I got a picture of that somewhere.
Oh, man.
But
You gave me my first set of chains, Benny.
I did, and they were rotten heavy suckers, weren't they?
Hey, they worked for what we were using them for.
They were
but-
perfect for what you were using.
Oh, for your firewood.
Yeah, we were
Yeah,
cutting
for that old
firewood.
army truck.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As a pair of them big old heavy 3-railers that had square links, they were huge. They were bigger than 8 mils. I don't know what those things were, but they were heavy. It's like, I don't want to throw these.
Give it to them kids.
I don't even want them on the truck.
Yeah.
If I put them on the truck, I got to use them.
Where'd you end up getting those? You find those somewhere? Or?
No, they came with that truck.
Okay.
When I bought that truck from the guy I bought it from.
No.
So, but,
That's funny.
What?
Oh, that's funny. I guess I probably knew that at the time, but I didn't remember that story.
What'd you have to pay for those chains, Nathan?
Oh man, you told me the whiskey, but I already forgot the name of it. Let's put it out there now on the record so people know.
Tullymore Dew whiskey.
Okay, that's the whiskey I bought you. Yeah, and that was a good trade for us.
It was a good trade.
I think that's the first time I ever bought whiskey. I think I was old enough. Yeah.
I think you had to ask your brother where to go buy it.
Yeah, that's right.
I had to ask my wife.
Was your wife old enough then to buy whiskey?
I don't know. I'm trying to. Yeah, she had to have been.
She had to have been.
Oh.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, we were married at teenagers, so
Yeah.
there was quite a while where she wasn't old enough. That was a long time ago.
But, I don't know, this whole... I've done a lot of thinking since you started this deal. I really have. And, you start... When does a guy figure out how to drive on this kind of conditions, on the slick roads? And I just have never had a problem driving on slick roads. I don't ever think, but then I think back, and I was about 12 years old. And we were over in John Day, Oregon, at a friend of ours' cattle ranch, and they had this big pond. It was probably, I don't know, is a big pond, 12, 15 acre pond, and it was 30 below, and the wind had been blowing, and that pond was all polished. And we had about a 63 or 64 Chevy pickup, and my dad says, why don't you take that pickup out there in that pond and just go play? And I'm not kidding you, I was about 12 years old. It had a 4-speed. I could not tell you the motor that was in it. I don't think it was probably a 6-cylinder is what I'm guessing. But anyway, I just went out there on that pond, and it was slick. And I just go out there and spin cookies, and, I slid that pickup. I was probably out there 2 or 3 hours. I was having fun, But I was already driving a pickup by then because we always had livestock, and you fed out of the pickup. I knew how to drive it.
How about tractors, Benny? Were you driving tractors when you were young, really young?
Yeah. Our first tractor, it's kind of funny. I just ran into a guy down here in Oregon the other day that's got one. It's an old John Deere H. Had to throw the flywheel to start it. Didn't even have a starter on it. Then I thought we really got big. We got an 8N. And, so I was backing manure spreaders and trailers into, hay trailers into barns. And, I was doing that at, 8 years old. Just learning, in the wintertime, them tractors would slide. Both of our places when I was a kid were on pretty good hills. So you'd slide off of them. You just learned, it just never, I've been thinking about that, and there wasn't.
Even back then, you're learning how to drive on snow and how to ease into it.
Right.
Even with those tractors, I'm sure.
And that old 8N, when we got it, and it was shortly after it, the brakes went out on it. And you couldn't get parts for the brakes. So you learn to drive that tractor on a hill without brakes. You know how to turn it uphill to stop it, and you just, you didn't.
You adapted. Yeah.
You adapted.
Yeah.
That makes me think of me driving a grandpa's car. You remember that old Mercury Monarch?
Oh, the green one?
It's like the car was older than I was, but it's like Grandpa would leave it there, and he was gone a lot. I remember I'd be all alone, so I'd be out there cruising the neighborhood. This car was
really? You weren't even like 16?
Don't tell Mom.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully she doesn't watch this episode.
Yeah.
You remember that car? You remember a tree fell on that car. We lived on a slough in North Pole, right?
Yeah, I don't know where your house was there.
And I remember waking up one morning. I'm a kid, I'm like 5, 6 years old, and I look out the window. Grandpa used to live in the basement of our house. We had a little apartment unit.
Okay.
And he lived down there, and I remember waking up one morning. He'd parked that car out back, kind of by the slough, and I look out the window, and a huge cottonwood tree was on top of that car. It had fallen over, a beaver had chewed it down, and it fell over and smashed that car, and I was just like, whoa, the beaver took out Grandpa's car, But that was the end of that car.
Is that what happened with it?
I think so.
I remember it had an 8-track player in there, and I don't know if there's an 8-track tape in there or not, but it was, man, that was an old car.
Man,
Shoot,
my first car had an 8-track tape in. What are you talking about?
Well, that was only like 60 years ago, right?
Yeah, little shorter than that.
Sorry,
50
Benny.
years ago. My first known pickup was this. I wish they still had it. It'd be worth a lot of money. It's a '67 Chevy step set, half-ton step-side Chevy,
Wow.
and had a 6-cylinder with 3 on the tree.
What color was that truck?
Baby blue.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And
Simpler times, right?
oh man, actually, I tore the clutch out of that truck trying to learn how to shift without a clutch.
Oh, man.
Back then, I wanted to be a truck driver. I guess you know
Yeah.
you'd try to. Yeah, but I tore the transmission out trying to do that.
Oh, man.
Then I had to save up the money because my dad was mad and get a transmission. But it was only like $300. But $300 then was a lot of money.
Were you a bad kid growing up, Benny? Or were you?
Not really.
Yeah.
I never had time to get in trouble. My dad made sure we worked.
Yeah.
We had milk cows. I'd get up at 5 o'clock and milk 10 to 12 cows before we went to school. Then come home after school and have to milk those cows. You didn't have time to get in a lot of trouble, you know.
You'd have to get up pretty early in the morning to milk cows, right?
Yeah,
Like
and then
5, 6 in the morning, something like that?
and then catch the school bus.
And then do it again when you get
And
home
then
in the afternoon, huh?
Yep. I wasn't the best student in the world. I didn't like school.
You're probably looking out the window most of the time, huh?
Probably, you know. So we worked,
Yeah.
you know. My dad had a real good, the ability to, you'd try to go out on play on Friday or Saturday night, and for some reason at 5 a.m. you got up and had fence to build, or he had some hard manual labor job to do. It seemed like, oh man, that wasn't worth it last night. It hurts too much this morning. Plus, you had to get up and milk those cows. That was a 7-day-a-week job. You didn't get a day off.
Yeah.
And
That's some of the best milk you'll have, though.
yeah, the cream, that Jersey cream we got. Yeah. You know,
How many milk cows did you guys have?
anywhere from probably 6 to 12.
Okay. That's
It
a lot
just
of
kind
milking.
of depended on. We had some really good friends that had a Jersey dairy, and if a real high production cow would lose a quarter, you know, one of their teats had quit producing, got injured or whatever, then they'd bring her to us, and we'd, you know, milk her for a few years because they'd still milk, you know, 6-7 gallons of milk per milking.
Man.
And then we were considered a grade B dairy. We all went into milk cans and into a cooler.
And this was in Oregon, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eastern Oregon?
No, Western Oregon.
Western.
We're just outside of Salem and down by Albany.
Okay. That's a pretty area down there.
Yeah. It's changed a lot, you know. All the country that used to be farm ground and stuff is now under houses, and it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't been over there in years and don't really care to go back because I know it's changed so much. It just,
Yeah.
so.
So you were milking the cows twice a day and going to school, running tractors, fooling around with a pickup truck on the ice. And then you just after you graduated high school, what did you end up doing right there?
Right out of high school, I went and herded sheep for a summer, and then came back home, and then went to Texas, showed cattle down there.
So were you riding horses when you were a kid too?
Oh
or
yeah,
is that, okay.
yeah. I've been riding horses since I was probably 3 years old. My mother had rode horse. My mother rode horse right up until she had me.
Wow.
My mother was a horsewoman from the time she was a child.
Yeah.
Both my folks grew up during the Depression. My mother was born in 1921. My dad was born in my mother was born in 21. The dad in 1919. I was an accident. My little brother was a really big accident, kind of like you, Nathan. I was
a good accident.
I was 10 years younger than one of my youngest
okay.
sister. And then
It just kind of happens, right?
Yeah. And so my folks both grew up on family farms in Iowa, and they didn't have tractors then. They farmed with teams of horses.
Wow.
And so then,
So you actually got to hear the stories of I walked in cow poop to keep my feet warm going
Right.
to school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And back then, in Iowa, they got a lot more snow than any place. They used to get snow clear up the eaves of their houses back then, but we won't get into that. But it's that just carried forward. My dad was a workaholic and very, we weren't allowed to do a lot of stuff. We didn't really. He didn't allow us to go out very much. Work, and every one of my brothers and sisters, we all got a pretty high work ethic, because of that, I mean, my sisters worked just as hard as us boys did. There was no difference between boy and girl in our family. My sisters worked just as hard as we did, outside and inside. We all had our responsibilities. We all had some responsibility inside. It just was, after dinner, all of us boys washed dishes. We didn't have a dishwasher.
Yeah.
We never had a TV until I was like 11, and one of my older sisters bought a TV and put it in her bedroom. That's just the way life was. My dad ended up working for the federal government as a USDA meat inspector, and then when we still lived in very, very northern California against the Oregon border, he had a veterinary practice in the evenings and after work and weekends, and so he worked all the time.
Yeah.
My dad would work, wherever he was working at whatever packing house, he'd work all day and come home and work 4 or 5 hours at home. He didn't come home and go in and sit down and say, "Oh, I've had a tough day."
Yeah, they just did it, right?
Yeah.
So were you born in California then?
I actually was.
Nice.
Yeah. Very northeast corner against Oregon and Nevada, a little town called Actually, I was born in Cedarville, California, but we lived in Alturas.
Okay. And then the family, did you guys move up to Oregon after a little while?
Yeah,
then?
we moved over to Wairika, California, and then my dad took the job as a USDA meat inspector, the relief guy. So any federal veterinarian that took vacation, he went and filled in for him, and he covered Oregon, Idaho, western Montana, and Washington. So he traveled a lot then.
Yeah.
After I was about, I would have been about 12 or 13, then he was gone. He was gone all week, and then he'd come home on Friday night. And even while he was gone, I had cows to milk and left with that responsibility to take care of everything.
Did you guys have a cow or that you would keep to yourselves to eat off of?
Oh, yeah.
So did you guys eat pretty good, eat steak pretty regularly,
we ate
hamburger and all that?
Yeah, we always ate. We always took one of them Jersey steers and fattened it up, and then we'd feed it on corn and butcher it, and we fed hogs the same way. We usually had a garden.
Yeah.
That's all evidence of that era of what my folks were, the Depression type.
Yeah. That's what they had to do to survive.
That's what they had to do to survive. You didn't go to the grocery store and buy a can of beans or.
Do you remember, was the food bland, or did your folks use salt and pepper and stuff like that?
We had salt and pepper, but my mother, I love my mother, but she was not a very good cook. Everything was either raw or burnt. That's why I like burnt toast. You've never been in a restaurant with me. Aaron has. When
I remember that at Coldfoot one time. Yeah.
Burn my toast.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
So it's my sisters ended up being pretty good cooks, but we ate good, but I don't know that it was all really spicy or anything. It was pretty just straightforward, good working man type food.
Yeah.
Meat and potatoes.
Yeah. And it still sounds good to this day, doesn't it?
Can't you tell?
Yeah.
You can't. You try to get away from it, and it just. I probably eat too much because back then you. As a young person, I worked, and I could eat, and you burned those calories.
Mm-hmm.
That first truck that I was in kind of partners with that guy. He had cattle ranches, and part of the deal with me being in that truck, we had to haul that hay, and it was squeeze loaded to load the truck, but we had to hand unload and elevator that hay in a barn. And those truckloads, I can remember today, they had 484 bales on them.
Oh, man.
And you handled every one of those bales going into that barn, you know.
And you probably got pretty quick at doing that.
You did. You know, back then I was in good shape, you know. Very physically fit. And that's a bad thing, you get in these trucks and you don't, because especially when I started, I was sitting in that truck 24 hours a day. To make those kind of miles that I was making, you didn't have time to get out of the truck and exercise.
Yep.
Sitting, and in the long term, it wasn't healthy, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Dad's got a lot of stories like that too, hauling hay and doing all that stuff. And man, he was in good shape when he was a kid like that too. It's amazing how all this technology's kind of made us a little bit lazier.
It has.
You can get a lot more done, but
Yeah.
man, I was even thinking about that the other day. Is like, I think I spun out twice this winter. It's like I've spun out more this winter than I have in 10 years probably. It was like I'm out there struggling how to. I'm quick at chaining up, but it's just like I used to be.
Quicker.
When I first started, it's like, man, I was practiced up.
Yeah. and now it's not, you know, I still feel I get it done faster than a lot of guys, even though I'm old and shoulders are shot. But it's that muscle memory and experience that makes us, you know.
Every step counts.
Every step counts, and you just, I don't know, you just do it. You know, it's that get her done.
Yep.
And so yeah, and you know what, the other thing is, you know, these trucks today, they've got so many more luxury items, and I'm not talking inside the cab, I'm talking outside. Lockers.
Yeah.
You know, I never had lockers. I never had a locker in a truck till I came up here to run this haul road. Never. I did it all with just a power divider, and you learn to drive different doing that, you know. And I've always had, I guess, I never had hot rod cars, but I've had hot rod trucks. I've always had trucks that run really well.
Yeah.
I've always had guys that knew how to make them run. And, you know, with cattle, you don't get back to the same shop after every trip. You're all over, you know, so you learn to rely on guys out there to work on those trucks. And I had a guy there in Reagan, California, Mike Rollins. That guy can make a 4 1/4 B model run, you know, and run good and
Get good fuel mileage.
get good fuel mileage and lots of power. You know, you've both been over cabbage. You know, I could go headed east with a load of cattle over cabbage, and I pulled it back then. By then that truck was a 92 W900L, 4 1/4. Actually had a C model, 15 over, 358 rears on 11.24.5 tall. Truck could run 105 miles an hour, and I drove it there a lot. But I could pull cabbage with that truck with 82,000 right at 48 miles an hour.
I bet you had fun sacking guys on that hill.
Oh, you did it all the time.
You get that grin on your face at the bottom.
Yeah.
You're like, here we go. I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah. One of the I was coming out of Texas with some cattle and headed to Petaluma, California, and I was out there on I-40 and out there headed into Barstow, California, and I'm just cruising. I mean, I'm coming up, I'm passing trucks. You know, I'm not speeding, but I'm passing trucks going up before you drop off into Barstow, and this guy gets on the radio and goes, "Sure must be nice to run around empty like that." I go, "I'm not empty." "Oh, baloney, you're really light." No. I'll bet you I outweigh you. No way. And the argument was on. Well, we got over there to Mojave, and I had to pull in there to the truck stop and get a little fuel before I went over to Tehachapi, and he pulls in behind me, and I says, "What do you want to bet?" He says, $100. So I rolled across the scale, and I still weighed 81,000. He goes, "How are you going to get across the scale?" I says, "Drive." Well, that truck had air dumps on the front axle, you know, but I wasn't telling him that.
Yeah.
So he's betting me I can't get across the scale at Tehachapi, so we just drive up there and drive across the scale and dumped the air and just kept going, you know. And he's like, God, how did you do that? I just drove across the scale, you know. So.
Did you ever have a time where you were driving truck down the States and your truck broke down in a weird spot and you're like, oh, great, I got to get this thing moved, or
Oh, yeah.
you got to get it towed or something like that? It's like embarrassing, you know, there's people around or something like that.
Yeah, I had an 03 Pete, had a C15 in it, and I can't tell you the highway number, but it's Raton, New Mexico. And that whole town, that's where they have those horse races and all that. It's pretty high altitude there, the El Capitan Mountains. And I don't know what the grade is going through that town, but 5 or 6% right in the town. And there's 3 of us running together, and I'm the last truck. And the light turns yellow on me, and I go to slam my clutch in, and I got nothing.
Oh, man.
And that light's turning red, and I just crammed on the brakes and killed the truck. So here I am with again, I had a load of fat cattle going to Tolleson, Arizona. And so George, the guy ahead of me, he pulls into a parking lot, and I'm grabbing coveralls. I knew instantly what happened. I knew that clutch linkage came undone. And George comes running back down the hill, and about that time, the city cop shows up, and he said, well, I'm going to call a tow truck. And I says, I'll be gone before you get that tow truck here. And I kind of had a little argument with him, and he says, I'll give you 5 minutes. And I said, okay. And so George shows up there, and this cop says something to George, and George says, if he says 5 minutes, it'll be 5 minutes. And I grab wrenches, and I roll under there and holler for another wrench. I remember I asked George, find this wrench in my toolbox, and I got that linkage all put back together.
And this is at, like, on a hill, right?
On about a 6% grade. It was dry, you know, it's just, I don't know, 60, 70 degrees in the middle of the day.
Okay.
You know, in the middle of a town that's got traffic going by you, cops sitting behind you. And so one of the biggest scare, I scared myself that day. But anyway, so I get the linkage all put together, and George is standing there, and I said, George, jump up in there and push that clutch in. Holy smokes, that driveline was under a lot of torque. And when he pushed that thing under there, it scared the crap out of me. That thing slapped loose, and you know, and I told George, well, it released, you know. I said, start the truck. And he started the truck. He said, work it in and out a time or two. I rolled out of there, and I'm jerking them coveralls off, and that cop says, I have never. He said, I've been working in this town, I can't remember how many years. He says, a long time anyway. He says, I have never had a truck driver get himself going on this hill before.
Oh, they've had that problem before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Probably would be tough there, the stoplights and all that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's probably why he was calling a tow truck.
Yeah, it
He's
was.
like, this again?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, that's exactly why they'd never had anybody get their truck going again, you know. And I think I was there maybe 7 or 8 minutes. I had that truck rolling. You know.
Smooth operator, Benny Bond.
Yeah. Just because I was driving 007 for your dad or your brother.
That's funny.
Oh, that was funny. But,
Oh.
yeah, I've had all sorts. You know.
That ever happened driving up here, up on the haul road, where your truck just died on a hill?
No, I've never had it just die up here on the hill. I mean, I've been in trouble. You know, I lost a boot just as air-to-air boot. I was southbound empty, thank goodness, and just as I topped the pass, I heard it go woof. I knew what it was right away because I'd had that happen.
Yeah.
You know, a number of times before, and you just know what that sound when it happens. It's like, oh, blew a boot, rolled over to the top of the pass, and broke a clamp, put it all back together. I always pack clamps.
That horsepower gets you every time.
Yeah.
All that boost.
Yeah. That truck had horsepower. That was that blue Kenworth.
It's no fun when you don't have that boost.
Yeah. I never had that happen. I never did lose a boot on that Western Star that I ever remember. With that Kenworth, it had enough turbo pressure that it'd suck a boot, break a clamp.
Yeah.
You know, I've had coming south one time, and I pulled in there at the north side of the pass to throw a set of chains, and everybody was chaining up. I threw in there, and I didn't set, pulling out in the parking lot there. I didn't set my trailer brakes, like we've been talking about it when you burn out and stuff. But I went to take off, and that trailer wouldn't release. It's like, what in the world? And in that time, I think that valve was failing, and it was probably leaking. But the truck running, hurry, other trucks around you. I did, and I don't hear real good. I didn't hear that air leak back there on that trailer while I was chaining up. I was able to move and roll on my chains, but when I got in to take off, I couldn't move. That trailer was locked up, and it was cold and the wind was blowing. I don't remember exactly. I'm sure the temperature was probably 25, 30 below, and the wind's blowing. And I don't remember who all stopped there. We had 4 or 5 guys there trying to work on that trailer. We ended up, it was the valve going to the lift axle, and it wouldn't hold it up, and you darn sure didn't want it down.
No. Was it drifting on the pass?
Yes, it was.
That's why you guys were chaining up.
Okay. So we ended up getting the air built up and getting it lifted up as high as we could, and then we run a chain over the top of the flatbed and chained that lift axle up, and then bypass that valve.
Who was all there helping you?
I can't remember. There was a bunch of us, but man, that was a long time ago.
And that's the great thing about it, though. You may not know somebody's name up there, but they're going to be helping you, because we're all in this together up there. You know?
And I've helped a lot. The first guy I ever helped, Aaron can tell, it was the big black guy that drove for Carlisle Heavy Haul.
Kerry Hall?
Kerry Hall. And I was coming south, and he had that heavy haul truck, and they're on top of the pass. And he blew that little 90-degree elbow water hose that goes from the compressor to the motor. And you can't use a regular piece of hose there because it can't. You absolutely cannot. And so I don't know how many trucks. There's a lot of trucks parked there. It must have been 8 or 9. And they're all there with different pieces of hoses. And I roll up there, and I said, what do you need? And the guy says, probably don't have it, but we need that little elbow. I got one. And it was an old one. It was a used one because we replaced that hose on, I just didn't like the way it looked, but I threw the used one under there and pulled it out and handed it to them. They're like, what do we owe you? I said, don't even worry about that one. I don't even want it replaced. Just there. And that's the first guy I helped on the haul road up there. That first Christmas, I always work Christmases because I don't have any kids, and I wasn't married at the time or nothing, and so I'd work Christmas so people with kids could go home. And so the first Christmas I was up there, I stopped at Coldfoot, and Coldfoot would give you a Christmas dinner for free. And I stopped there and had my Christmas dinner, and I'm headed on Linden load. And there was a guy that was leaving a flatbed, an owner-op, and I really couldn't remember who. I couldn't tell you years ago, but I can't remember his name. But I got up there where the road's sliding down now, and there he sits in the middle of the road, antifreeze all over, and he lost a hose. I think he lost the bottom hose, and he had it all put together, but it's about 40 below, 40, 45 below, and he didn't have enough antifreeze. Well, luckily I come along, and I had 6 gallons. And then I had some water, and it took everything he had and everything I had to get him filled back up. Christmas Day, there wasn't much traffic out there.
No.
Yeah.
And he could have been there a while if I hadn't just, and he brought that antifreeze. I told him who I shopped with.
I think I remember him coming by. I don't remember who it was now, though.
Yeah, he brought that antifreeze to the shop and gave it to you or Lonnie because I wasn't there. I was gone when he brought it to the shop, and it was just there. And that he was an older guy, and I don't think he was up there much longer.
Who's he working for?
I want to say he was leased to Sourdough. He had a load of pipe on, I can tell you that.
Huh.
That would have been in 09. But anyway, it just, things, that even hauling cattle, I carried a lot of parts when I hauled cattle too, pulleys and belts. And that 92 truck I had 99 clearance lights on it.
Wow.
And they were all incandescents, they weren't before LEDs. So I was an expert at changing an alternator. About every 3 months I changed an alternator on that truck.
You probably had an alternator or two with you in
I
that
did.
truck.
I still pack, I don't in this truck errands, but I always packed an alternator. Probably should go buy one and just stick it in that truck. It's just one of those things that, you help a lot. Cattle's kind of the same way. You see somebody stop. It didn't matter who you were hauling for. Somebody's broke down and stopped load of cattle. You stopped.
Yeah.
See what you could do to help them.
That's funny. I gave a guy in Texas an air boot one time to clamp, and he was surprised I had one, but then he was surprised giving it to me, and it's like I don't need nothing, but if you see somebody needs help, you go help him.
Yeah.
He's like, I will.
One time I come off, it's north of Helena, Montana, and they're between those two passes. I can't think of it anyway. It's north of the scale there at Helena, and I come rolling off there, and here's a load of hogs. That was in the early 2000s, and I was hauling a lot of hogs out of Montana to California, a trip every week, and there was a lot of companies that hauled those hogs, and so right in the bottom, this guy's pulled off side and the hood up, and I just stopped and walked back there, and I go, what do you need? Well, he says, I blew an air-to-air clamp, He said, would you, go to the top of the hill? We didn't have phone service there. He said, go up, would you call and have them send somebody out? I said, oh, no, I got a clamp. I walked up the truck, got the clamp, we put it on. He's like, I can't believe that. I said, I always pack these clamps. It's an easy fix. Back then it was a $10 part. Why do you not have it in your truck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to change a lot of that stuff early. Just fall time, you're changing water hoses and water lines, clamps, and
Yeah.
just throw the used stuff underneath the bed
Yeah.
just in case.
Yep.
So
I've done that. I did that before I was ever up here, And then when I first started coming to Alaska, I hauled groceries over the Alcan, and I helped guys in Canada. I was running south one time, and a young kid wanted to hook up with me and run south with me, and I darn near killed him, but got just out there south of Toke and rolling along there, and he's talking on the radio, and I heard it on the radio, woof, and all of a sudden he goes, I lost a turbo. I lost all my power. I'm like, nah, you blew an air-to-air hose. Oh, no, I lost a turbo. It's like, no, you blew an air-to-air hose. well, how do I fix that? I said, well, pull up here behind me, and walked back there, and sure enough, that hose is all sucked off that. It's a Signature 600. I said, I got a clamp. Walked up, got a clamp, put it on that hose, and away we went. He goes, oh, I was panicking. I thought I was going to have to work my way back to Toke, with a blown turbo. No. And then I was still running paper logs in and running Canada. And I'd left Fairbanks that day. I think I went clear to Muncho Lake before I laid down. Pretty good jaunt.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, about killed him. He couldn't keep up with me. Young kid, and I was in my 50s,
Yeah. Still a kid at heart, though, right?
Yeah.
So how did you hear about coming to Alaska? Did you have a buddy that's like, hey, I'm going to go up there? Or how'd that transpire?
Well, it started out in 2008. I went through a bad divorce. I never ever thought of coming to Alaska. In 95, I was burned out. I running for that Rod Owens. I ran 1.3 million miles in 7 years, and almost to the day 7 years, and I was burned out. So I sold my trucks and went back to cowboying, and then anyway, ended up back in trucks but in 94 when I sold those trucks, my dad, we had a friend of ours that had some leases on the pipeline when they built it. Of course, this is 20 years after, but Pat still had these connections up here. He's like, well, you want to go to Alaska and drive truck? And it's like, no, that's a long ways from home, I never thought about it. It just wasn't anything that crossed my mind as a cow hauler. Mm-hmm. And so then in 2008, when I went through that divorce, Mike Meekum told me about a guy that needed trucks running groceries up here. So then I didn't have, I was kind of homeless. So I was like, okay, I was dead broke. She'd pretty well wiped me out. So I just went and bought a truck for Canada. It was a little Freightliner from one of those dad's trucks, those Doug Anders trucks, and had a little 465 Mercedes in it. And turned out to be a good truck, and I just started hauling groceries up here. Those loads weren't heavy. So, a lot of times I was only 65,000 coming up here out of the States with groceries. And then I got to know people, met your brother. He brought me my first big radio.
One of those old Kenwoods.
Yeah, it was a Kenwood single band.
Yeah.
And met Lonnie. Mike kind of got in trouble then and ended up leaving here, and I was actually gonna bought that truck, that blue Kenworth, from him, and at that time, that was right at the time Ice Road Truckers came out. Carlisle lost that BP contract. Linden got it. Linden needed owner operators right now, and I was the first owner operator they hired on for that.
Wow, so that worked out perfect.
It was all timing. It was, I guess meant to be. It was just weird how that all happened. It wasn't anything I set a goal. And in all honesty, a lot of guys told me, you ought to go run that haul road. That when I was, Jerry Turk was an old driver that was from up here on the haul road. And I got to know Jerry running the highway. He was hauling groceries. He's in his 70s. Maybe close to 80 then. And he kept telling me, man, you ought to go up there and run that haul road. It's like, no, I'm not that good of a driver. Oh, yes, you are. He'd say, yeah, you are. It's like, oh, no, I'm not. I just didn't think I was that good of a driver. I still don't think I am.
Was part of you a little scared, not scared, but maybe like nervous about doing that? Like, no, that's...
Yeah, I'm going to, I rode once the winter before up to Prudhoe and back with Mike Meekum. And then I got the job there with Linden, and I can never remember that guy's name that I followed up there that first time, but he's passed away now. Old guy that, God, anyway, we took off. Jared Post said, you go with this guy, and I took off following him, and he ran off and left me by the time we got to the pass. He was out of radio. By the time I topped the shelf, I couldn't talk to him on the big radio anymore. But it was July, so it was all good road, it was bare. And I wasn't pushing. I had a Twinkie load, and so I get to Prudhoe, to the stop sign. I didn't know where Linden was. I had to call somebody. I forget who I called. I called somebody and says, which way do I turn at the stop sign? So I turned right and found Linden and went down there and figured out, dropped my trailer and hooked up to another one and headed south. And then about the fourth load of doing that, I'd gotten to meet Dale Foster, a bunch of the mud haulers, because I'm sharing a shop with the two greatest guys in the world, Lonnie and Aaron. And, I got to know all the mud haulers. And got to know Dale Foster. And it's about the third or fourth trip I'm headed north, and Dale's leaving town and I'm leaving town together.
This is where he told you, you don't know this hill?
Yeah, you don't know this hill?
I remember that.
And, he told me every hill all the way to, I think I said this in the last deal, And
yeah, and didn't you say recently that you just thanked him?
I did.
This past winter or something like that?
Yes, I did. I thanked him for that.
He was probably like, for what?
Yeah. I've done that with several guys now that I come back and I realize how much they help me. We'll be someplace, here this winter I walked into the hot spot there and Richard Merrill was in there. Richard Merrill was working for Linden, pulling for Linden too.
Yeah.
Then, and Richard helped me a lot, There's a lot of people that helped me a lot, and a lot of guys wouldn't talk to me, until you prove yourself up here. And I I think I'm a pretty humble person. I don't try to come across arrogant as a know-it-all. If somebody has something to say, I try to listen. The day you quit learning is the day they throw dirt in your face.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this is a different place to run. It's even though I'd been through all those weather conditions in the lower 48, some of them are like that down up here, but there's a lot that's different. You know, it's just, it is a different world. And I, you know, the grades, yeah, there's a lot of steep grades here, but you go in and out of some of those ranches on the California coast and that, there is some hellaciously steep grades. And I've been up and down those with loads of cattle and, you know, and you learn how to, you know, those cattle, you get in a gear and you go up a hill just like you would a tanker, because if you try to shift, they're going to slop around and you miss a gear. And, you know, so I had all that kind of experience. It's the weather conditions probably more than anything.
Yeah, they can change just in a matter of minutes.
And the understanding how the ice and snow really works. You know, ice melting from the bottom up, your tires being white. That's stuff that I saw, but it never really registered as to what you were doing.
When you were down in the States hauling cattle in the snow, did you ever look left and right at your tires of your trailer to see if they're moving?
Oh, yeah, you always did that when it was cold, because you know, I know, you know, I've had them freeze up down there. Not as, you know, it's not as much because you don't have as long as winters.
Yeah.
You know, you do a lot of the same things that, you know, learning how to chain up. I actually learned from a guy that taught me right. Just like they do it up here, you know, fold your three railers in half and throw them over, you know. Guy Kellen was my age now. You know, I was a 28-year-old kid and got on top of Warner Pass, and we're in about 18 inches of snow and snowing hard, and we got to chain up. And I just told the guy, you know, I said, I don't know how to chain up. And he's like, I'll help you. He gets out of the truck, walks back there. He said, I'm going to show you this one time. And he the chains were still in the bag. We pulled them out, laid them out on the ground. He showed me how to fold them in half. We threw them over. And he only did one, he laid the first one up on that, threw it over the tire. He says, I got my truck chain up. Walked off.
So you had to figure out how to connect it.
Well, connecting it, that's pretty, you know, I had already chained up pickups and that.
Okay, yeah, so it's like.
So, you know, because we never, as a kid growing up, we didn't have four-wheel drive pickups. We had two-wheel drive pickups, so we chained them up.
But he didn't say connect the middle one first and then the inside?
No, he just showed me how to drape them and roll up on them. You know,
which that's a big thing too, because I've seen some guys when we were going over Snoqualmie Pass, they're throwing their chains in front of their tires, and they're gonna. You remember that? Drive on that? It's like, wow.
Well,
poor guys.
You know, a couple of little deals, but one time on Ladd Canyon there out of Baker City, Oregon, I was headed west with a load of fat cattle, and it was chains required. And I mean, I ran that. At that time, I was running that every day. And they'd put in that big, long chain-up area. And I come rolling up there, and that thing's packed. I mean, there's no open spots. So I just roll up there towards the top end of that chain-up area, and I park beside this guy, and I get out of the truck, and I park beside him because I saw how he was trying to chain up. And he had his chains laid out. And I get out of my truck and I start throwing chains. And of course, he was trying to throw a set of three railers, and all I'm throwing is singles. And I throw a set of singles because I really didn't need chains.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a cop sitting up there. Mm-hmm. And so I just threw a set of singles, and this guy comes running around. You can't park there. You're going to be in my way when I get chained up to take off. And I go, believe me, I will be gone before you get chained up. You know, and he's arguing with me, and I threw a set of singles on each side of the front driver. I ran back, and I only threw one drag train, which you're supposed to throw two, but I threw one on the side the cop was on and was gone. And he hadn't even he'd pulled up on his chains and was trying to figure out how he was going to get them pulled up over the top, And so, yeah. And then I went over Lad. I got to the rest area at the bottom, pulled my chains, and all these guys are driving by still with their chains on, and they're going to run clear across the valley there because they had to put them back on at Spring Creek to go up over Cabbage and Meacham and Cabbage. And so I'm not going to wear my chains out, so I pull in there and jerk my chains off, jump back in the truck, run over the bottom of Spring Creek, throw my chains back on, and I'm still way ahead of all them guys. You're dodging chains all the way down the...
Yeah, if only you had some kind of rake or something to pick up all the chains,
Them chains don't last down there. They're so cheap.
Yeah, they're not good chains at all, and and to me, 90% of the time down there, I really didn't need the chain. I could have got through what I was going through, but they force you to.
Yeah.
Another time I don't know if you guys ran up 97 much there in Oregon, but
Yeah, I think we did a couple, or Dad and I did a few times, I think.
yeah, but north of Bend, north of Madras there's that Cow Canyon. It's a narrow canyon with 3 lanes, 2 lanes going up, and I'm coming out of Madras and somebody's telling me all the trucks burned out on Cow Canyon, and you got to chain up, you got to do this. Of course, then that was in the early 90s. They weren't watching you like they were today, and I had my sister running sleeper team with me, and we drop into the bottom of the valley there, and it's wet pavement there. And you leave the valley and climb up on a little bench, and my sister goes, "Are you going to chain up?" It's like, "No." She goes, "Well, they said all these guys are burned out up there." I said, "I know." And he says, "The snow's good. We can go." And I went up there. There's about 4 trucks burned out there, and I'm weaving in and out of them, and up, and past them all and went over the top. Never threw a chain.
Yeah. Didn't slip any wheels.
It's nice when you know how to read the road and you can see that.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like here. Those tires that I ran back then, they make the same number tire, but it's not the same tire. They were Bridgestone M711s. Man, those were a good tire. I'd get 225, 230,000 out of them down there. And they had good traction. We'd sipe them. We always siped them. And that guy that taught me to chain, he did explain to me how snow works against tires. And he always told me kind of a little opposite of some guys, but I still followed that theory up here. I never wanted new tires at the beginning of winter. I always wanted my tires about a third wore out, because you have to fill that tread to get traction. So if you only get 2 inches of snow, you aren't filling that tread all the way for traction. Yeah, we got the sipes and that helps. But when you fill that tread depth with packed snow, you have that much more traction. And that's been part of my theory. There's different things that work at different times, and that's one of them. And so I always wanted my tires wore flat and about a third of them gone when I went into winter. And that's what I tried to do.
So you'd put your winter tires on a little earlier.
Yeah. And I know Lonnie and Aaron looked at me a time or two funny, but that's what worked for me. That's what worked for me in my truck. And I it's just what worked.
Yeah.
And so, but that's how that guy's theory was, and that's how I learned. But that guy Callan, he's long past, but he taught me a lot. That Rod Owens at Dispatch, years later, Rod told me, I put you with him for a reason, because he said, I knew you had the mindset to do this if I put you with the right guy to teach you. We had the same size trailers, so he taught me how to load my trailer, how to handle the cattle on a trailer. Guy Callan, to this day, I think a lot of him, And
it helps being around the right people.
Yeah.
So you're not learning the bad habits, so you're learning it the right way.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if you're lucky or if it just works out the way it's supposed to.
I don't know, But there's a lot of those guys up here too, and it's amazing that the amount of guys that knew people that I knew Charlie Smoots's brother. I hauled cattle off of their family ranch in LeGrand, Oregon. Custer, talking to Custer one day, and he's from Lewiston, Idaho, and he said, well, I learned to drive. I drove cattle truck. That's what I learned to drive a truck on. I looked right at him and says, from Mike Donaldson. He goes, yeah, you know Mike? It's like, yeah, I know Mike. It's R.C. Burnett. I knew R.C.'s sister and brother-in-law. They had a ranch right next to that ranch that I hauled that hay on, that 484 bales. They were neighbors.
Wow.
It just amazing the amount of people up here that I knew, somebody they knew, or we probably missed being around each other just by months or a year or two,
Or you probably drove right by them too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's guys up here that, another one's Lauren Wood that pulls for STR now, I think. Lauren, I met Lauren when I broke my leg up here, and we were having dinner with Bill Nick, and Lauren looked at me and goes, I think I know you. And I'm like, well, when I was hauling those cattle, I was tired. I was running a lot of miles and running hard. And so pretty quick, Lauren goes, I said, well, I pulled for Hillcrest. He goes, well, do you know Ed Bratton? And I go, Egg Tran Ed? Yeah, I knew Egg Tran Ed. He goes, well, I used to run with Ed in the fall and the spring when it was busy and run sleeper team with him in an old cab over. And pretty quick he goes, you had a purple Kenworth that said Bull Buggy on it, didn't you? Yep. He says, I remember you.
Wow.
And he looked at Bill Nick and he says, you want to talk about a guy that ran hard? He says, this guy was invincible. It's like, well, I wasn't invincible, but I did run hard.
Yeah. It's just something you guys did.
Yeah. It was cow hauling. And it just related, it just came over up here. And I think, I think that's the way I ran up here too, wasn't it, Aaron?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think we both worked pretty hard.
We did. And it's just not me that worked that way. I mean, when we were when I did finally get on at hauling mud, thanks to Aaron and Lonnie and Mike Nault, we had a good crew there. That job was the best job I ever had. The best job I ever had. Better than cow hauling, that was a good job. We were respected. We were treated with respect, and we made good money. And with those three things right there, people will die for you. You pay people good, you respect them and treat them with respect, you get respect back.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, some of these companies don't do that now, but they would get a lot further with some of these people if they did.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's but yeah, that hands down, that is the best job in 38, 30, I don't know how many years of trucking I've got total because I've left and come back, but it's, man, that was the best job ever, and the best crew of people I ever worked with when Mike had it.
You guys moved a lot of freight.
Yeah.
Oh, it was quite a team. I mean, we worked together.
We did. Just after I got hired there, because I started into November, 1st December. First load with Aaron. I won't repeat that whole load.
You have to remind me later.
With Nancy. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, Aaron and I took some overlides. We can't repeat that story on here. But anyway, it was winter, and I don't know, I'd been going back and forth, and, I had middle of my second year driving up here, and And I come south, and there's a load of mud sitting on top of the pass, and the truck's gone. Of course, I knew the trailer. I knew whose it was. It was Lonnie, the other Lonnie. And so I just rolled off there and went down to the state camp and pulled in there and called Mike. I'm like, Mike, there's a load of mud sitting here on the top of the pass. Does something need to be done with it? Yeah. Can you hook up to that and take it to Prudhoe? And it's like, yeah. I said, he told me, well, the paperwork's in the lift axle box. So I dropped my trailer at Chandler, went back to the top of the pass, picked that up, took it to Prudhoe, and then came back. And can't remember just how I did it, but I loaded Lonnie's trailer back on my trailer because I didn't want to pull his. So I backed his trailer. I don't remember. I think I did. I dropped his, hooked up to mine, backed it up to the dock, unhooked it, because I did it all by myself, so that had to be how I did it. Backed his trailer up. That's the first time I ever backed a trailer up on another trailer.
That's a tough dock to do it, too.
Yes.
That's not ideal.
By yourself. I pulled back and forth a couple of times. I was starting to get worried if I wasn't going to, because that dock wasn't particularly plowed out. It had, 4 or 5 inches of snow. Anyway, I got it all loaded and chained down. By then, I'd been hauled home a couple of times, and because I hauled some decked up trailers for Linden, so I knew how they needed to be chained down. I chained them down and came back to town. I get to town, and Mike came up to me the next day when I got ready to load the next day, and he's like, I really appreciate you taking the time to stop and call me to see if that load needed to go on.
Yeah.
And I did that a number of times. Somebody break down and leave their trailer, and you come along and sit in there and go call and find out, because then we didn't have cell. You didn't have none of the cell service up there. You had to stop at a state camp or Coldfoot.
Yeah.
And all of us hauled somebody home. Your brother was sending me pictures here a while back of me hauling him home, him hauling me home.
That's just how it works. You haul somebody home because your turn's coming.
Yeah, and some of the guys I got to know was because of that. Paul, Eicherman. The first time I met him, I didn't know him. He's driving that Green Pete for Kings, and I'm coming south. I was up by the pass, and I meet Lonnie, and he says, Paul Eicherman's sitting there at Coldfoot, and lost power divider. He needs a ride home. I said, okay. So I didn't know Paul. So I come rolling into Coldfoot, walked in the restaurant, and I said, Paul Eicherman around? He goes, yeah, that's me. And I said, Lonnie Lofts told me to stop, and you need a ride home. Oh, yeah. So he comes out, gets the truck, and we go over and load his truck up, and I hauled him to town. After that, Paul talked to me all the time. I'm still good friends with Paul.
Isn't that something? It just takes a little 5-6 hour ride home, or, being with somebody, and then you get to know them, and then you're like, man, I got another friend now.
Yeah. And here, when I was driving the Bond truck, 007 for your brother, and I got up there, it was 45 below, and the air compressor kept shutting down on me, and I'd stop, and by the time I'd try to get out and figure out what it was there, then it'd start building air. Well, it was just, it had some moisture in it. When I'd stop, then the engine heat would warm it up, and I could go again, but Paul come along, and I was fighting that, and he stayed with me all the way to the pass until we got to warmer weather where it quit doing that, and he wouldn't leave me.
Yeah.
It's like, I got this, Paul. I know what's going on now. I just got to stop. Nope. I'm going to stay right with you till we get out of this. And I owe Paul breakfast for that yet. I haven't got him paid for that, but I will.
That's just how it is up here, though. It's how it used to be down in the States, too, I'm sure. Back in
it
the
was.
Day.
It's, I came in I caught what I thought was the last of the good trucking down there in the late 80s and 90s. When all these states started tying together with computers, it it got less and less where people would help you, because then they're against the time all the time.
Yeah.
It was a gradual build to these electronic logs, which I think are absolutely dangerous. I spent the last 8 years in the lower 48 managing a cattle ranch and cowboying, and I just came back this year to help your brother. And I watched the trucks down there, and they are so out of control because they're racing that logbook. And you can tell the trucks You can tell the trucks that are getting to the end of a day, and they need to make it so far.
Yeah.
And they are absolutely driving out of control. And these guys don't have that kind of experience to be driving like that. And the other thing that in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have the number of trucks on the road that there is today. I'll be the first to admit I drove a lot of miles, and I'm not joking. That 88 truck I had in that 92, they would flat out run 105 miles an hour loaded, and I ran them there. And that's back when the speed limit was 55. And you could no way in the world do that down there. There's way too much truck traffic. I mean, you come across Interstate 40 now on Sunday night, and it's bumper to bumper trucks. There ain't hardly a car in that. That is all trucks. You guys been down there, you see that.
Yeah.
Especially on Sunday night. Them guys are all headed for LA for Monday morning deliveries. And, it's to me, it's become more dangerous, really, than it was driving 105.
What if there's more trucks on the road because they're driving slower?
Well, no, because our speed limit was 55 back then. There's more trucks because of the increased population. That's why there's more trucks. You take the world population, or the population of the United States 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago now, compared to today, and I guarantee you there's a huge difference. So it takes more trucks to service those people. Mm-hmm. And you also got to remember that not just here, but this is a statistic that's probably 20 years old now. But at the point in time, and I can't remember the exact year, but I was talking with a guy, and this guy was in the trucking industry, the grocery trucking industry. And the grocery shelves in LA rolled over every 24 hours. So that means every product that's in that shelf, say at 6 o'clock one morning, is gone the next morning, and it's completely replaced. Now, I don't know what that number is today, but you think about the amount of people that are down there and the amount of groceries that got to be hauled in there every day.
Somebody's got to be organized to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. and then you increase the population down there like it has, Back then, there was still a lot of dairies in Chino Valley. There was a lot of farm ground in that LA area and San Diego, and that's all gone. That's all under housing now. That's no longer farm ground. So
you don't have as many local farms nearby. Everything's trucked in.
Everything's trucked in now.
Yeah.
I don't know if there used to be a cow slaughter plant there in Pico Riviera. We used to haul a lot of cattle into Pico Riviera, and I think that plant's probably gone. I was hauling there in the early, like 2000, 2001, 2002. I'm pretty sure that there used to be a lot of small packing houses down there, and I know Farmer John's has gone there in LA, the hog plant. That's all that ground has either been replaced by a business or housing.
Yeah.
So you take that increase to the population to that area, and you see that happening here. It's not just the lower 48. That's happening here in Anchorage. You think of, I was just down there with Mike, and driving around out on KGB Road and all that, the number of new houses being built down there. And all that's due to increased population.
Yeah.
It takes more trucks. It takes more and more trucks to service people as our population grows.
Yep.
And more trucks to produce oil.
Yeah, and in a way, you're kind of seeing across all fields, the old guards retiring, moving on, and this new generation's coming up, and some people don't, they don't want to drive truck or they don't want to work in the trades. They want to go to college and do whatever, that's fine. But where there's kind of a gap here, where the older guys are moving on, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now all across the country and all the trades and trucking especially.
Yeah. Well, you do. It's every aspect of our lives. We do need professional people. I don't begrudge people going to college. I didn't. I went to a kind of a trade school at TCU a ranch management program at TCU University, and that helped me all through my life. It taught me how to manage my books and how to run a budget.
Yeah.
How to figure out what it's going to cost. When I owned my own trucks, right up until I left up here, I knew all the time what it cost me per mile to run a truck. To me, that was critical. I needed to know what it cost per mile to run a truck. But there's the work ethic that we learned, even though you guys are, 20 years younger than I am. That work ethic that we learned at my age and by the parents that we had that struggled, my parents struggled through World War II, and the Depression. And that work ethic that came from that generation instilled into their children. I don't want to say the next generation, because my brothers and sisters are all of a different generation than I am. They were born in the 60s or the 50s. I was born in 1960. So, but we were all taught by the same parents that work ethic.
Yeah.
And people would tell my dad, we never had big places. We always had 20, 30, 40 acres. And people would go, why do you waste your time with a little place like that? And my dad's answer every time somebody asked him that was to teach my kids how to work. Mm-hmm. We had a doctor that was a neighbor there at that place we had outside of Salem, Oregon, and he was a dentist. And we rented the property from him, but all the fences were destroyed. They were old, ran down. And so Dad made a deal with him that we would rebuild the fences in order to rent this property to run our cows on. So we started around his yard, and it's a circular yard, so we had to set a bunch of fence braces to make corners to go around that yard. And we're up there building those fences, and Dr. Van Santen comes out there, and he looks at my dad, and he goes, how does a professional man like you know how to build fence like this? My dad says, well, I was building fence like this before I was ever a professional man.
Yeah.
So you instill that as a kid.
Mm-hmm. It's ingrained in you.
It's ingrained in you.
Yep.
So,
And that's something to be thankful for. Maybe at that time you were like, man, I'm just working all the time. You'd maybe rather be playing with your friends. But then you look back now and you're like, wow, I'm glad that he raised me like that.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. We had our other problems, but the work ethic, I'm thankful that he taught me that. Probably in some ways it was instilled into me too good. I never learned how to play. I never learned how to go have fun. So work is my fun, and that's what it does. What I do it until I'm burned out, and then I go do something else, and I come back to it.
Yeah.
And but it's been all in all, I've had a good life, so I'm not complaining about too much of it.
You have anything you want to touch on before I got one more thing I wanted to ask Benny, but
not that I can think of. I'm sure I do, but
you don't have to answer this. This might be personal, but when you were when you did come back to work at Linden, didn't you meet somebody there?
I did. My wife.
Do you want to touch on that just a little bit? How, you started at Linden. I don't know if she was there maybe when you first started. But
No, she wasn't there. I first worked for Aaron's father-in-law, Troy Sanders. He's passed away now, bless his soul. And then I went to work for Mud Hall, and then the Mud Hall got sold twice, and I wasn't happy with the third new owners, and so I went back to Linden. And my wife, technically not, but I call her my wife. Anyway, Jewel was working there, and so we knew a lot of the same people.
yeah,
We had passed who knows how many times. She knew one of my very best friends. She knew him. And so I worked for her for 2 years before we ever went out, and ended up leaving here with her, yeah. And, Aaron worked with her. She taught Aaron how to dispatch trucks, I think. Wouldn't you say, Aaron?
She sure taught me how to use a computer. Or she tried.
She tried. And, I love her dearly, and we've had some struggles here recently. Not bad struggles, but we're getting through them. And
but nobody really knew that you guys were seeing each other, right?
No.
Yep.
No, we kept it a secret for...
I was sitting right next to her and I didn't know.
And I knew Aaron very well. I was at a time in my life that I'd been married once, and I'd tried dating women, and you just couldn't find anybody I was compatible with. Let's put it that way. And I got to know her, and then a couple of little things happened, a truck wreck and this and that. We ended up going to dinner, and
How'd that go? Did you just say, "Hey, you want to go get something to eat"?
yeah, it's literally kind of what happened. A truck wreck happened, and the driver that wrecked the truck was a hazard on the road, and I was glad to see him gone. I said, I'm going to go celebrate and get a steak dinner, and because he was union. And Jewel says, I want to go. And I said, well, come on, let's go. And she wouldn't go with me that night because she was playing hockey. So we went a couple of nights later because of another truck wreck, and the road was shut down, and Sean Ruff and I were supposed to go north with oversizes the next morning. And so I get home after having dinner and everything, and your brother calls me at 11 o'clock that night, says, I got a truck broke down in Delta. Can you go get it? And so I went down, and unbeknownst to him, I'd been out with his working partner. And then came back and went north with my oversize late that afternoon, and came back the next night, and she came over the house, and we had dinner and did things, and then just started. She ended up moving in with me, and we kept it all a secret, even though I was on the Richardson Highway, which I don't know how we did that, but she did have a clicker to my shop, so she could pull that car right inside. Nobody ever saw it sitting outside. We never let that car sit outside. And Jack Marad was the terminal manager at the time, and we'd been going out for 3 to 4 months. She'd been living with me for 3 to 4 months, and we walked right past Jack and his wife and Fred Meyer east, and he did not see us. And I'm like, we got to tell Jack, because this is going to get us in trouble, So we went in and told Jack, and he's like, oh, well, no big deal. Just keep it all above board and honest. And I told Jewel right from the start, you keep this honest. You do not show me any favoritism. Absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
Because I was a workaholic, and I tended to get more loads than other people always, because I never, ever turned a load down. That's kind of, it goes back to that cow hauling deal. I never, ever turned a load down. And it didn't matter. If it was blowing up there, I didn't care. I'd go as far as I could and wait it out and go on. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. And we're still together, and
the rest is history, right?
The rest is history, and we're going through some health problems with her right now, but we're going to get through them, and a little tough time with that. I thank God that I was working for Aaron, and he's like, you go home and take care of her. Don't worry about us up here. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Benny, thanks for coming on.
you bet.
Let's do this again sometime. We'll bring in a couple characters, and
We need to get a couple guys in here all at once.
we'll have some fun.
We'll have 3-hour conversations.
There you go. You'll look over. Where's Aaron? You look in the truck. He just got in and took a nap.
Took a nap. But it's been good up here. I've made a lot of good friends. You know, I was really only up here for 8 years straight on the haul road, but but there again, I got to think about it. You asked me the other day about, how many miles I had and all that. And I knew that the answer to that, I'd known that for quite a while, because I always kept, I still have the sheet of paper at home. It's packed away, but it has the mileage written down of every truck I ever owned, of how many miles were on that truck when I bought it.
That's cool.
And, I'm right at 4.5, pushing right at 4.5 million miles in a truck. And I had, between the two trucks I had up here on the haul road, I put a little over 500,000 on the Kenworth and a little over 500,000 on the Western Star up here. And so.
It's a lot of miles.
Well, there was a couple of years there when I first started up here. I had gone through that. I was broke when I came up here. I really was. In those first 2 years, I was knocking out 140, 145 loads a year. That's trucking up here. That's hard trucking up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I figured it out, and I slowed down, and then I was doing about 120 trips a year was all I wanted to do.
That's about right.
Yeah, and that gives you a couple months off.
Yep.
You got to take that time off to play and enjoy this life too.
Yeah, and of course my play was to leave here and go down to Nevada and brand calves, ride on a horse, and work. So
that's work and fun, right?
Work and fun.
Yeah.
But thank you guys. I appreciate you guys doing this. I think this is a good thing. Thank you, Aaron, for the support.
You're welcome.
All righty.
You bet.
Benny Bond.
Yeah.